is...
You Got a Friend in Me
Yep, by Claire and Dad.
by Claire and Dad.
You got a friend in me. You got a friend in me. When the road looks rough ahead and you're miles and miles from a nice warm bed, you just remember what your old pal said. Yeah, you got a friend in me. Girl, you got a friend in me.
This is the second verse. I'm doing the second verse. You got friends in me. You got a friend in me. You got troubles. I got them too. There isn't anything I wouldn't do for you. We stick together, can see it through. 'Cause you got a friend in me. Yeah, you got a friend in me.
Some other folks might be a little bit smarter than I am, bigger and stronger too. But none of them will ever love you the way I do. It's just me and you, girl.
And as the years go by,
Our friendship will never die. You're gonna see it's our destiny. You got a friend in me. You got a friend in me. Yeah, you got a friend in me. That is so cute, isn't it? You're not going to be able to get that song out of your head. I woke up this morning singing that song yesterday, and it's so cute that we almost miss the whole reason of the song, isn't it? Which is, you've got a friend in me. We stick it through no matter what happens, you've got a friend in me. And that's a topic I want to talk about today is friends. And that's a good question. Do you have good friends? Do you? Are you a good friend? And I'm going to make it real simple right from the get-go, right on the top of your program notes. A friend, a relationally fit person, is someone who can make and develop good friends. And here's the challenge. That's not as easy as it sounds, is it? It's just not. And let me illustrate why that is. The American porcupine has approximately 30,000 quills. And when it attacks an enemy, it embeds a quill, and that the microscopic barb will swell because of the enemy's heat, and the quill can fester and even become lethal. And the porcupine is not a very lovable animal, is it? I mean, we have books and movies that celebrate all kinds of animals, right? We have a pig named Arnold, Babe, whatever. We have a dolphin named, yes, we have a spider named, a fish named. We even have a little cute skunk named Pepe Le Pew. And we have a porcupine named, that's my point. We don't have any porcupines. They're not lovable animals. And porcupines generally run alone. You know, wolves run in packs, sheep gather in flocks, we have a gaggle of geese, we have a murder of crows. You know what they call a group of alligators? Don't take this personally, it's a congregation. You know what they call a group of husbands? I looked this up on the internet, so it must be true. A group of husbands is called a couch. Do you want to know what they call a group of wives? How many of you want to know? All the guys are raising their hand. A group of wives is called a nag. Now, it must be true because it's on the internet. But porcupines normally are alone. They're alone, except John Ortberg writes, in late autumn, a young porcupine's thoughts turn to love. But love turns out to be a pretty risky business when you're a porcupine. Females are open to, dinner and a movie about once a year. The window of opportunity closes quickly, and the girl porcupines know is the most widely respected turn down in the animal kingdom. Because this is the porcupine's dilemma. How do I get close without getting hurt? And that's our dilemma too, isn't it? How do I get close without getting hurt? Because we all carry a little arsenal of quills. Criticism, judgment, rejection, self-pity, arrogance, unkindness, defensiveness. But we want to get close. We meet neighbors, we go on dates, join churches, form friendships, get married, have kids. We try to figure out how to get close without getting hurt. Proverbs 18:24. Friends come and friends go, but a true friend sticks to you like family, which is all well and good if you're in a family of kittens or bunnies. But what if you're in a family of porcupines? Sticking close means a whole other thing. And the truth is, there's a little bit of porcupine in every one of us. And some people might say, I've got a really tight-knit family. I don't really need a lot of friends. But here's what I've discovered about healthy family relationships. Wildly loving families are wildly loving in all their relationships, not just their families. Wildly loving families have good neighbors and they have good relationships at work and at church and all over the place. And loneliness might be a lot more common than we're willing to admit. Marla Paul, who was a columnist for the Chicago Tribune, confessed in her column one day that she was lonely. She wrote, "This loneliness saddens me. How did it happen that I'm 42 years old and not have enough friends?" And she asked her husband, "Is there something wrong with me?" She wondered if there were thousands of women out there who really didn't know how lonely they were. And so she ended her column by writing, "I recently read The Ugly Duckling to my daughter. I felt an immediate kinship with this bird who flies from place to place looking for creatures with whom he belongs. He eventually finds them. I hope that I do too." And after she wrote that column, letters and emails poured in. She said she had 7 times the normal response to her column on that. And she said all those responses had one theme. Why do I feel so lonely? And why is it so hard to make good friends? And if loneliness is common among women, it's epidemic among men. One survey I read said 90% of men lack a true friend. And I would guess that if I asked all of you, how lonely are you today? You'd go, "I'm fine, I'm good." But if we had a chance to sit down and talk, we might tap into an undercurrent of loneliness or a longing for deeper and more meaningful relationships that you might just not be aware of yet. Psychiatrist Jacqueline Old said, "No one wants to admit that they're lonely. Loneliness is something people associate with losers, which is why Mother Teresa called loneliness the leprosy of our modern age." Dr. David Russell from UCLA developed a loneliness assessment tool. And I've printed, take out your program notes if you haven't yet, I've printed 7, these are a sampling of the questions off of that assessment. And I'm going to give them to you today. And they're going to be up on the screen. And as I read each of these statements, I just want you to give yourself a mental score. Like, how often do you feel that there's no one you can turn to? Give yourself a 1 if it's never, a 2 if it's rarely, 3 sometimes, 4 very often. And the next question is, how often do you feel that you're no longer close to anyone? Give yourself a score. How often do you feel that your relationships with others are not meaningful? How often do you feel that no one really knows you well? How often do you feel isolated from others? How often do you feel that people are around you but not really with you? How often do you feel left out? And if you might not be able to do it, if you do it at home and your total is maybe 15 or higher, it's really time to take a look at this area of your life. And I'll bet, though, that all of us would admit, no matter what our score, is that we would like to have deeper and more meaningful friends than we do. So I'm gonna suggest 3 moves that we can make in the coming days and weeks to become more relationally fit. And here's the first move: from isolation towards community. The Bible is full of warnings regarding the dangers of isolation. And it's also full of encouraging verses about our responsibility to move towards other people to form strong friendships. Ecclesiastes 4, 8 through 12 is the classic text. And here's some excerpts from that section. I turned my head and saw something meaningless. I saw a solitary person completely alone. No children, no family, no friends. Yet working obsessively late into the night, compulsively greedy for more and more, never bothering to ask, why am I working like a dog, never having any fun? And who cares? It's better to have a partner than to go it alone. And if one falls down, the other helps. But if there's no one to help, tough. By yourself, you're unprotected. With a friend, you can face the worst. Can you round up a third? A three-stranded rope isn't easily snapped. Notice what that says. Without significant relationships, our work, our jobs are essentially meaningless. I mean, nobody on their deathbed is going to say, hey, I want to see my portfolio, my account portfolio one more time. Nobody's going to say, hey, bring me the pictures of all my real estate holdings. Nobody's going to say, line up my trophies. I want to see them one more time. People on their deathbed don't want to be surrounded by their rewards. They want to be surrounded by their relationships, by their families and their friends. And another benefit of having friends is just the simple deal of encouragement. We're going to get knocked down sometime in our life. And if we don't have friends, who's going to help us get up? That's what Ecclesiastes says. We can face the most difficult things in our lives if we don't have to face them alone. A number of years ago, when I began to speak some, it was very early in my kind of speaking day, and I was asked to give a talk at a conference. And I was pretty insecure about how I was doing, and so I gave this talk, and I wasn't sure how it went. And after the talk, a really good friend who heard me came up to me, and he gave me a huge hug. And he just spoke some words into my life of encouragement at that point. And afterwards, about a week later, he sent me a little gift. It's right here. And you can't see it, but it's a plastic deal that has 3 seeds in it. 3 seeds. And we made a little pact that day. And he said, Dennis, oftentimes when we give something of ourselves to God, it's like a little seed. There's a potential for a lot of life in there, but without the right encouragement, without the right nurture, that seed's just going to stay a seed. And he said, you have a seed, you have a gift. He said, and I want you, we're going to make a little pact, and I'm going to remind you of that gift that you have. And I've kept this in my office for over 35 years. And every time I wonder, how's this going to, I look at this and I'm reminded. And I have a friend who understands me, who knows me, who believes in me. So just get out there and do it. And everybody needs those kind of friends. And I hope that you have those kind of friends in your life. And here's a definition for great friendship. It's a covenant, usually unspoken, among individuals who to seek the well-being and the full potential of the other person. It's resisting the urge to be independent, self-centered, and narcissistic. And I fear that there's so many people in our culture who have a twisted concept of friendship. It's often, what's in it for me? Where can I go to find someone who will fix me, who will serve me, who will help me? And that approach just leads to more and more isolation. To make that move towards community, Jesus said, give first, then it will be given to you. Serve, and then in due time, others will serve back. Disclose, open yourself up, and people will become more trusting of you. It'll come back to you. Believe in others, and in due time, others will believe in you. And so our first move is out of isolation towards community. Here's our second move. From superficiality towards significance. And I don't care how many hundreds of friends you have on Facebook, you cannot have hundreds of friends. You just can't. Acquaintances, but not genuine friends. Jesus couldn't even do it. He had the circle of 72. Within that circle was another circle of 12. We call them the disciples or the apostles. And even within that circle of 12, there were 3. Peter, James, and John, that were often invited along with Jesus so that he could even have a closer knit group of friends. Well, these 3 friends were invited along to Jesus when he raised Jairus' daughter from the dead. They were invited up and participated in one of the most mysterious experiences ever recorded in the New Testament, the Transfiguration, where Jesus and those 3 friends saw Moses and Elijah. Pretty interesting experience. And those 3 friends were invited along with Jesus to participate and help Jesus prepare for one of the most agonizing experiences of his life, his betrayal, his trials, and his eventual crucifixion. And he invited these three guys and just asked them, would you pray for me? And each of those moves, Jesus moved those friends to a more significant relationship. And that's what friends do, right? We move from superficial to significant. And we just stick it through. There was one lady who after she had gotten a perm where her hair ended up way too frizzy, she said, a real friend will sit with you till your hair grows out. There's a Swedish proverb that says, joy shared is twice the joy. A sorrow shared is half the sorrow. Almost every week at my men's group on Saturday mornings, a guy will come and he'll have his phone out and he'll be pointing to something. And I know it's going to be a picture of one of two things. Their kid or grandkid, or a picture of a big fish that they caught that week that they think is bigger than the picture of the fish that I caught last week. And they're never bigger, just so you know. They never catch bigger fish. But I think in the atrium, people today, hey, look at this. Why do we do that? Because the joy shared is twice the joy. And another thing that happens at our men's group and often out here in the atrium is somebody will be talking and they'll share with the group something that they're facing that's pretty tough, pretty difficult. And we might pray right in the group, or after the group is finished, I'll see a little cluster of guys over there, and one guy will put a hand on the shoulder of another man and they'll be praying. And I know what they're praying about. They're praying about some concern that's going on in that person's life. And a week later, that person will say to me, last week I came in here pretty heavy, and after you all prayed and after being here, guess what? I feel like my spirit just lifted. Because a sorrow shared is half the sorrow. And that only happens when we begin to develop significant relationships with each other. And all of us know how empty it is to sit in setting after setting where people just babble on for hour after hour about meaningless things like pro sports and the stock market and politics and all sorts of stuff. And isn't there just a moment when you want to just get up and say, can't we talk about something else? Something more significant, something more important for a change? And often when Jesus was with people, he would ask a question that would move the conversation from superficial to significant. In fact, there are 307 recorded questions of Jesus in the Bible. And Jesus loved people. And so he began to ask potentially life-changing, relationship-altering questions like, why are you afraid? What do you want me to do for you? Who do you think that I am? Why do you worry about all kinds of things, clothes? What good would it do to gain the whole world and lose your soul? You see, the asking of a significant question, when Jesus did that, it opened the door for a significant conversation. And guess what? When you have a significant conversation, it moves the relationship towards meaningful. Without that significant conversation, we're stuck there. And oftentimes when Jesus would ask these questions, the conversation would then move to spiritual issues or moral issues or marital issues or eternal issues. Deepen the conversation, and you deepen the relationship. You know what I found that could move a relationship or a conversation from kind of superficial to significant? I found that if you add just one single word, it can change the tone of the conversation. We'll often ask somebody, hey, how are you doing? Okay, I'll ask you this morning, hey, how are you doing? Yeah, everybody says fine. I know everything isn't fine, but that, we're just being polite, right? You add one question to that, you add one word to that question. Ask the person, how are you doing really? You just add that word and then you just listen, because people go, you really want to know? And if we go, I really want to know, you've automatically moved that conversation from meaningless or cordial to significant. Just add the word really. How are you doing really in your marriage? How are you doing really about that big project I know you have due next week? How are you doing studying for that test? How are you doing? Name the topic if you know it, but you add the word really, it's going to move the conversation. And the second question that will help us move from superficiality to significance is this one. How do you feel about that? Pretty simple. Someone will say something like, I'm not sure I'm going to make it through the layoffs in my company next week. Or on Thursday, I'm going in and we're going to get the test results. A great question to ask at that point is, how do you feel about that? And a person might say, to be honest, I'm really scared. I'm really scared. And then you could ask, well, what do you do when you're scared? And they go, I drink. Or I worry. I spend up all night worrying. And then I ask, well, how does that work for you? And they go, well, it's not working very well. And then you could just move on in the conversation. But by asking, how do you feel? And then communicating, I'm really here to listen and I care. You move the conversation from insignificance to meaningful with just those two questions. You know, I've had a number of friends who are facing some serious medical surgery. You know, the kind where the doctor says, you better get your affairs in order before we go in. The kind where when they wheel them down the hall on that gurney, you say goodbye. It actually might be goodbye. And I've been with people in that situation. And you know what I've discovered? Everybody there who's only thinking about three things. My relationship with that person, my family, my relationship with my family and friends, and my relationship with God. And everything else fades. And one of the reasons we're doing this in this series to help us get relationally fit is we don't want anybody to wait until they're laying on a hospital bed staring at the ceiling to wonder or question, do I have any really good friends? Do I have any really good friends? Let's not wait till then to develop a close-knit, intimate group of friends. So that's the second move, and here's the third move. From comfortable towards inconvenient. You know, making friends is an inexact, sometimes frustrating, often lengthy endeavor, one that requires initiative, risk, hurt, disappointment, trial and error, lots of patience, and lots of forgiveness. You know, the Bible often refers to quality relationships by saying they're like silver or gold or valuable jewels. And this emphasizes the sheer value of friends, but I also think that it's hinting that friendship development involves a certain amount of mining, a certain amount of digging, getting our hands dirty, and sometimes having some exciting discovery that really doesn't pan out to be what we thought it might be. You know, we can't just pull up, there's no such thing as a fast friend drive-up window. You know, where you pull up and you go, hey, I'd like two really good friends, one with, one without, and make it fast. You know, it just doesn't work that way. You know, I have a good friend that says, it takes a long time to make an old friend. And she's right. I was at my bank a number of years ago, and I was talking to the account manager there, and I asked him, you know, the topic of church came up, and he said, yeah, I've been going to this church. I've been there about 2 years, but I'm looking for another church. And I said, well, why is that? He said, because I haven't been able to find any good friends there. And I thought, that's the problem. That's the problem. Let me be really, really clear about this. We don't find good friends. We make good friends. They're not just out there to be discovered. We make good friends. And if you're at Crossroads to find 2 or 3 great friends, you're not going to find them. You're not just going to discover them all full blown. You might have to kiss a lot of frogs to find a prince or a princess. Well, sure, every once in a while someone will say, yeah, we met and we microwaved our friendship and we just hit it off. And that can happen, but that's rare. I mean, so many people are hesitant to go into what I've called the uncomfortable, sometimes awkward phase of relationships that I call the small talk zone. Right? We don't want to go in there. You know, it's why many of us head for our cars right after the service, because we know if we're going to hang out in the atrium, we're going to come into the small talk zone. And it's hard. It is. It's awkward. I've had people say, I don't do small talk. Well, let me tell you this. If you don't do small talk, you're not going to get to big talk. Because big talk always comes through the small talk zone. That's the way relationships develop. People who have great friends are experts at small talk. And because I oversee the small groups here, sometimes someone's they corner me and they say, okay, Dennis, you are head of small groups, right? I go, yeah. I want you to put me into a very loving, nurturing small group with 4 or 5 other people with whom I experience instantaneous connection and authenticity. You know where the BS factor is low, Bible study factor is low, just to make that clear, and people are just real with each other. And it needs to meet on Thursday nights, and I need to be done by 7:30 because I have to get home and watch Scandal. Doesn't work that way, does it? There are no shortcuts. There are no fast friend drive-up windows. And people who make friends, we're willing to take those awkward relational steps. We become experts at small talk. We try a small group. It doesn't quite work out. We try another one. There has to be enough want to push through, especially in the early, inconvenient part of a relationship building. But if you just keep reaching and risking and trying and push through, sometimes the payoff comes. Last night, before the service, I was standing out in the atrium with a group of really good friends here at the church. As I looked, I knew I was talking about this, and as I looked at each friend, I thought, I am so grateful for these people in my life. And you know why I have these good friends with them? Is because we've made the investment with each other. We've pushed through all of that small talk zone, and now we're over here, and the payoff is coming. But if we're not willing to make the investment, we're not going to experience the payoff. There's a fire department at Gold Beach, Oregon, in their community there, and it's mostly volunteers. And every year they have a fundraising breakfast for the community to raise money for the fire department. And to advertise for it, all their volunteers, men and women, wear these t-shirts. And on the front of the t-shirt it says, "You come to our breakfast and we'll come to your fire." You make the investment in a relationship, guess what? When you have a fire, people are going to show up. Your friends are going to show up. And when you're trying to make good friends, I've observed this, almost everything we do is inconvenient and uncomfortable when we're trying to make good friends. But once we have good friends, nothing we do seems inconvenient or uncomfortable. You have a good friend who goes into the hospital. You drop everything and you're just there. It's not inconvenient, it's what you do. You have a good friend who's getting married or they're graduating. You take vacation time, you pay your way, and you just go. No matter how inconvenient or uncomfortable, it doesn't even cross our mind. But if you think back on a good friend and the relationship that you have, there was a time back here when you were in the uncomfortable, awkward, small talk, let's get to know each other zone. And I know for a fact today, there are people who are willing to drive thousands of miles just to see a really good friend. I know that happens. And so often when I give these talks, I use this as a litmus test. So here's a litmus test if you have really good friends. Let's say you were diagnosed with a very serious, life-threatening illness, okay? And besides your family, okay, we would all tell our families probably. Think of the next 5 people you would tell. Either call or meet with them in person and say, I just wanted you to know that I got this diagnosis this week. Think of those 5 people, okay, by name. Got them? Now, if you've been at Crossroads for a couple years or longer, and no one on that list of 5 goes here, it's time to make some relational moves. It is, because people don't go to friendly churches. People go to church to make friends. And it would be a real bummer if you were a part of Crossroads for a couple years or 3, and you never really developed any really good friends here. Because I think that's part of the reason why you're here. It's part of the reason why you're watching, is because deep down, you really want to have some good friends. And so I'm going to end with 3 very practical things that you can do today and maybe next weekend, so that 2 years from now, a year from now, you're not going to just want to head to your car when the service is over. You're going to want to meet up with some of the friends that you have here. And so here's 3 suggestions. First of all is this, and we're going to do it right now. We need to be willing to develop small talk skills. All right, so I want everybody to get up, stand up. All right, we're going to practice this right now. Okay, here's the deal. I want you to find somebody you don't know, all right? Find out their name and then ask them this question. What is something that you're looking forward to in the next month? Okay, I'm going to give you a minute to do this, so 30 seconds each. Meet somebody and ask them this question. Go. If you're out in the atrium, you got to do this. Okay, if you haven't switched, switch. Ask the other person what they're looking forward to in the next month. Okay, I'll give you 10 seconds to sit down. 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, now I know that pegged the weirdness meter for some of you. And I know it's just difficult, especially if you're kind of a shy, just thank you. There is something you could do to begin to make friends. Next week, just ask that same person that you met, if they're sitting around you, hey, what's something you're looking forward to doing next month? I'll bet there's at least 2 things in their life. And so next week you can take on that second one. So here's the second thing that you can do. If we're gonna make great friends, we need to put ourselves in environments that are made up of the kind of people that actually would make great friends. And one of those environments is a small group here at Crossroads. And often when you walk out into the atrium, you're gonna see clusters of people out there. And you know what most of them are? They're a Crossroads small group. They like seeing each other. They like hanging around each other. And so here's one of the things you can do starting even next week is join or host a small group. It's, as Katie mentioned, grab a friend. We'll help you figure out how to do that and even what to do. Meet with Aisha and me right down here afterwards. And we'll give you some ideas on how do you do that? How do you do that? It's not as hard as you think. You probably have, if you have no friends, go, you know what, I'm gonna make some friends here. And come to that meeting. If you got a couple friends, come, and we'll help you figure out how to do that. And the second environment here at Crossroads where you can make good friends is on a serving team. And when you're serving shoulder to shoulder, you get to know people. You do. And that's oftentimes where the strongest friendships are formed. And one of the best ways to get on a serving team, right after the service, go out to the next step area. There's 2 tables out there. Talk with one of our volunteers, and they'll help you figure out a serving team that you can join. It's the beginning step to make some friends. This past week, I got a call on Monday from the wife of a man who's in my men's small group. And she said, I'm checking Rick into the hospital, that's her husband's name, and we're pretty scared because he's got some very serious health issues. And I got permission to tell this story from Rick, and he's doing pretty well. I talked to him yesterday, he was still in the hospital, but he's looking, things are looking good, so there's no bad ending to this story, just don't wonder about that. But here's what happened as the week played out. As soon as I hung up the phone, I get a text message from his small group leader going, hey, did you know that Rick was just checked into the hospital? And when I talked to his wife the next day, I found out that 2 or 3 people from his small group had visited him on Monday night just to go up to the hospital and pray with him and pray with his wife and just be there and care. And then I sent an email to the guest service team, the ushers, for the 11 o'clock service. He's on that team. He's on the east door always, on the weekends, if he's feeling good. And I got this flurry of emails back. How can we help? What can we do? Can we go see him? Rick also, like I said, comes to our men's group on Saturday morning, and I quick email out to all the guys. Same deal. Flurry of emails and texts. Where can we go? What can we do? Where is he? How do we get a hold of him? And then on Wednesday night, I went up to see him, and when I got there, there were 3 people from his midweek small group that were already in the room. He was doing much better by Wednesday night. And before I left, there were 9 people in that hospital room, friends of his wife and friends of him. And when I went by the nurse's station, they were talking about assigning a bouncer to his door. It's like, I don't know what they're doing, but I think we need a bouncer down there. And when I got down to my car at MCR, I just sat in my car for a minute and I thought, would that everybody at Crossroads have that kind of friends here? And when I told Rick on Friday, asked him if I could tell this story, and I told him on the phone about what I was going to say, there was a long pause. And I could just hear him kind of weeping. And he just said, I am so grateful for the friendships that I have at Crossroads. He used these words, I'm proud to be a part of this community. And I thought about the hundreds of people who come here. They don't have that. They don't have that. But you could. It doesn't happen overnight. And I thought, well, what has Rick done to make those friends? Well, every Saturday morning, 7 o'clock, he's up at our men's group. People are getting to know him and loving on him. Every Sunday when he's healthy, he's on the East Door greeting people, making friends. And during the week, he's in another small group. And I understand, you know what, not everybody can do all of those 3 things. You can't, but you can do one. But you can do one. But you're going to have to move out of isolation towards community. You have to move from insignificant to meaningful, or need to move from comfortable to inconvenient. Because when we do that, we're going to emerge through that zone. And when someday that happens to us, we're going to have somebody there, some buddies there. And they're going to pray for us. They're going to love us. They're going to support us. And they're going to be our good, good friends. Let's pray. Lord, the reason that we're this way is because you are this way. You by nature are a relational God, and you put that in us. And your dream for us is that we would be wildly connected with wildly loving people who forgive and hurt and live and dream and care for and support and get to know. And that's your desire for us, and it can be done. And it can be done right here. In Jesus' name, amen.